Good afternoon, Year 4, and welcome back. Hope you've had a good weekend. I won't spend too long chatting now because we need to get this story continued. Our character's in the jungle and he's building up a relationship now with the orangutans, isn't he? So let's get straight back in it. As far as they were concerned, I was their mother. As far as I was concerned, they were my children. But what I truly loved about these creatures was how unhuman they were. They seemed quite incapable of any kind of calculated violence or cruelty, such as I had witnessed in Mr. Anthony's camp. They were peaceful creatures, generous-hearted. Yes, I'd known people like them, Kaya for one, my own family, and my friends back at home too. But the more I thought about it, and I thought about it a lot, the more I was coming to believe that deliberate cruelty was to be found only in humankind. Men like Mr. Anthony, who killed for greed and pleasure, men who destroyed the world about them. Whenever we'd found the right tree and settled in for the night, we would very soon discover we had inquisitive visitors from all around the forest. The first to come were usually gibbons, swooping and swinging down through the canopy above to check us out, and they would stay for a while, howling and hooting at us, showing off their outstanding athletic versatility. And when they'd finished a performance, they would sit around for a while watching us, but sooner or later they would get bored and leave. I never wanted them to. I could have watched them forever. Their acrobatics were amazing, flowing, graceful, so effortless it seemed to me that at times they looked like they were actually flying. With the gibbons gone, we were often investigated by whole families of long-tailed lemurs and red-bottomed monkeys with flashing eyes that would approach us through the trees to watch us, but they never came too close. All of these visitors were nervous enough to keep their distance. They were just curious. The young orangutans showed little interest in them. They kept their eyes on them, but they didn't seem at all fearful. It was only when that same orangutan appeared one morning in the canopy above our sleeping nest, rummaging around as if he meant us to notice him, that they became alarmed. The moment I saw him, I had no doubt it was the same orangutan who had bothered us before, and the uncomfortable truth was that if it was him, then like it or not, he was following us. And only then, as this realization sank in, did it occur to me that this might even be the same orangutan who had shadowed Una and me through the jungle all of that time ago. He didn't scare me, but as the days passed, and he was still there, still following us, it did unsettle me. The little orangutans, on the other hand, seemed to get used to having him around, and ignored him almost completely. He was so often with us, more often than not now, that we all began to think of him as a travelling companion, though he wasn't very companionable as such. I gave him a name. The others had names, so I thought I should. I thought of calling him Big Mac, after my old head teacher, but that didn't seem fair on the orangutan. In the end, I couldn't think of a proper name, not one that suited him anyway, so I called him Other One. I'd call up to him sometimes and wave, "Morning, Other One," I'd say. I'd only get a long, dark look in reply, of course. He was good at long, dark looks. Then after several days with us, he just wasn't there anymore. I missed him. I think the little orangutans missed him too. I was beginning to find the long days trekking along the stream more than a little disheartening. Other streams did join it, and it joined other streams, but it never became the river I was looking for, the one that would take me to sea and back to Mum. And that was another thing that I wasn't coping very well with at all. In my mind's eye I kept seeing that great green wave coming in and the devastation that it brought with it, and I realised more and more that I was hoping for the impossible. I would follow the stream, I would try and get to the sea, I would keep going, but I knew in my heart of hearts that it was just kidding myself in my desperation to believe that Mum could have survived. I tried, as I'd tried before, to put that hope out of my mind once and for all. I had to try and concentrate and put all my energies into the little orangutans, on finding food, keeping safe, just keeping strong. Instead, I turned to the only real hope I had left, Una. During the day, I was always too busy looking after the little orangutans to think of her that much. But every night now, as I lay listening to the forest around me, I'd make a point of closing my eyes and thinking of her. I'd wonder where she was and what might have become of her, how long it would be until I saw her again. I had no idea she was ever going to be able to find me in the immensity of this jungle, but I told myself she would, that she was out there somewhere, that she was alive. We were living under the same stars, the same moon, listening to the same din of the jungle. Every night I tried to fill my heart with fresh hope, hope that she was still looking for me, that one way or another our paths would cross. Another reason then to follow the stream, I thought. She needed water. She loved water. If I hoped hard enough, I thought then it might happen. It might. Keep believing. Every night. It was the last thing I told myself. Just keep believing. It wasn't surprising then that she appeared in my dreams as often as she did. So when I woke up one morning and heard the trumpeting of an elephant sounding out distantly through the jungle, I thought that I must be imagining it, still in my dreams. Only when I heard it again some time later, more fully awake now, did I begin to dare to hope that it hadn't been a dream, that my ears might not be deceiving me. Charlie was sitting on my shoulders, grooming me, delving into my hair with his fingers, an established morning ritual by now. She stopped her grooming. She had heard it too. She climbed at once onto my lap, her eyes wide with alarm. Tonk and Bart were already gone from the nest, playing somewhere nearby, but they came scurrying back and sat there with Charlie, all of them clutching me, still not allowing myself to quite believe it. I waited until I'd heard it again. When it came this time, it was louder, closer, more urgent. It was real! I wasn't imagining it. The trumpeting echoed through the forest. Gibbons and lemurs scattered, screeching high into the treetops. Clouds of birds and bats rose into the air, filling the forest with their thunderous din. The little orangutans were becoming frantic by this time, as the trumpeting sounded out again and again and again. She was calling me. I was sure of it. It had to be her. It had to be Una. But now it seemed to me as if the trumpeting was coming from further away. She was moving away from me. I had to go after her. I had to let her know I was here, that I was still alive. I was yelling out at the top of my voice, terrified that the moment might have passed, that it was too late, that my last chance of rescue was gone forever. I did not hesitate any more. I was on my feet in the sleeping nest, with the little orangutans clinging on where they could. I began the long climb down, talking to them all the way, reassuring them as best as I could. "We've got to go and find her," I told them. "She won't hurt you, I promise you, just hang on." And hang on they did, like limpets, their sharp little nails digging into me as I shinned down the tree to the forest floor. Leaving the stream behind us, I set off through the jungle as fast as my legs would carry me, in the direction of Una's last trumpeting call, stopping every now and then to call for her, to listen for her. But all too soon, with no new trumpeting call to guide me, I lost any sense of direction where I should be going. I found a track and followed it through the forest, hoping and praying she might have found the same track and be following it too. Suddenly it occurred to me that the hunters and their dogs followed tracks. Maybe this track. I could just be as easily walking towards them as towards Una, or away from them for that matter. But even as I was thinking this, I dismissed it as unlikely. I hadn't heard or seen anything of the hunters in a long time now. They must surely have given up. They must now have gone back to Mr. Anthony's mine. There was a risk though, and I knew it. But I had no choice. If I was to find Una, I had to take the risk. I had to go on looking for her, go on calling for her. So time and again I stopped, cupped my hands to my mouth, and shouted as loud as I could, "Una! Una!" It was loud enough to upset a few starlings and doves, and send them fluttering skywards, and to flush a pair of squawking peacocks out of the undergrowth. But I could tell that my voice was not carrying, not far enough anyway. The jungle was just simply soaking it up, stifling the echoes. Even so, I never gave up trying. Every time I called her, I'd stand there and listen, waiting for a response, listening for it, longing for it, but none came. The little orangutans clearly hated it whenever I stopped to shout for her. They kept hiding their heads against me, clinging to me, to one another. I think they must have thought I was angry with them. I stroked them, put my arms round them and hugged them. "It's all right," I told them. "It's all right. Only once more, I promise you. I'll just call her the once more." Ahead of us now I saw there was a great mound of grey rock, rearing up through the trees from the jungle floor, a miniature mountain shaped a bit like a giant ant hill. That was the place to do it, I thought. If I could manage to climb up to the top of it, then maybe my voice might carry further. I knew it was going to be a difficult climb, and it was too. Handholds and footholds were difficult to find. The rock face was wet and treacherous, and all of the time Charlie was hanging tight around my neck, half throttling me. Somehow I made it. Standing at the top, I took a deep breath and tried again, for the last time. "Una! Una! Una!" Around and around I turned, sending my call out into the jungle in all directions. I did not stop until my throat was raw, until I could shout no longer. There was no answer, except for the rasping of some nearby frogs that I must have disturbed. Once they'd begun, others answered, until the whole jungle was loud with frogs. I sat down on the rock in despair. I didn't doubt for one moment that it had been Una out there, that she had been searching for me, calling for me, and that she had now wandered out of earshot. We had been so near to one another, yet so far. I put my head in my hands and cried. Almost at once little fingers were prizing my fingers away. Charlie was looking up at me, reaching out and touching my mouth. Her eyes were telling me that she didn't like to see me sad, that I had her, and that I wasn't alone. I'll be fine, Charlie, I said, wiping my tears away with the back of my hand. And I knew I had to be, that I mustn't give in to despair. I had to be fine. I would make myself be fine. You've got to chill, Will. And I said it out loud. That's what Dad used to say, Charlie. You've got to chill, Will. Where there's a will, there's a way. That was another one of his jokes. He was full of jokes, my dad. But no words, not even those, could lift my spirits. I closed my eyes to stop the tears coming again, and they would have come too, had Charlie not insisted on opening up my eyelids too. I was thinking that Charlie, just like Una, spoke with her eyes. She was telling me to cheer up. So I did. I smiled back at her, and I could see that made her happy again. She heard it before I did, and looked up. So did Tonk. So did Bart. They weren't alarmed. They were excited, surprised. Then I saw him too, high above us, swinging through the branches. It was Other One. He'd come back. I was so pleased to see him, but there was something strange going on, something I couldn't understand at all. I thought I could hear him breathing, but that wasn't possible, because he was far away, 30, maybe 40 feet above us. Yet I was definitely hearing the sound of breathing, heavy breathing. In fact, it wasn't just breathing, it was heaving, it was puffing and blowing and snorting. Then I knew. Then I understood. No one puffed and blew and snorted like that, except Una. As I stood up, I saw Una come wandering out of the trees towards the rock, her trunk reaching slowly up towards me, scenting for me, feeling for me, and walking along on all fours just behind her was another dark-haired orangutan, a female. Like Una, she had stopped now and was gazing up at me. "What kept you, Una?" I said, and then the tears did come. Okay, we'll stop at that chapter and we'll start a new chapter tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.